right, so it finally happened. Candace Owens debated Rabbi Shmuley. We were expecting it. We saw Rabbi Shmuley posting on social media that it was going to happen. I thought, you know what? I kind of feel like it's not going to happen. I feel like something is going to occur where someone's going to pull out, but no, it happened. They debated on Piers Morgan live, and it was interesting because leading up to the debate, we didn't hear anything from Candace Owens about debating Rabbi Shmuley, which is partly why I kind of felt like, okay, is this really even legit? I haven't heard anything from her, but Rabbi Shmuley was tweeting about it like every hour on Twitter. So, uh, but when we saw that Piers Morgan came out and said they were going to be doing it, we knew it was official. So it came and it went yesterday, but we're going to take a look at it. So we're going to go over some key parts of the debate, and I'll also offer my commentary, but just kind of before we dive into some important parts or the meat of the debate that we'll watch together, I'll just offer a few preliminary thoughts. So, there's been a lot leading up to this, a huge controversy between the two where for quite a while, they've been going at each other back and forth. And Rabbi Shmuley holds that Candace Owens is an arch anti-Semite. And so he's been going after her since she was with the Daily Wire. And he's also been going after the Daily Wire because he just felt that they did not do enough to shut her down and to address some of the comments that she had made on her show with the Daily Wire. So that's been going on for a while. Now, Candace, for a long time, didn't respond to Rabbi Shmuley, but finally she started to respond saying, hey, for years, this guy has been harassing me. And so she finally responded and said that, Rabbi Shmuley and her daughter are deranged lunatics, and just kind of went off on them. So, the situation got worse, however, whenever Candace got her own show. She started to say a lot more things that were critical of certain groups, and a lot of what she said could certainly be interpreted in very negative ways, and it caught the attention of many people, including Rabbi Shmuley. And so Rabbi Shmuley has gone to the point of reporting Candace Owens to the FBI for a couple of reasons. Number one, over a pizza that was delivered to his house. Well, actually his daughter's house. And at first it might sound weird, like, why would you contact the FBI because a pizza was delivered to your house? Well, was it not kosher or something? That's kind of the joke that Candace Owens gives. But in reality, on the receipt was their name, their address, their phone number, all of that. And it was very clear that this was basically a message of whoever ordered the pizza was basically saying, hey, we know where you are, where you live, what your information is. So it's kind of an implicit threat. And it came on the heels of a lot of critical comments from Candace Owens. So Shmuley asserts that this is one of Candace Owens's followers threatening him. And so there's just been a lot of back and forth going on. So I was excited to see, okay, well, aside from all the drama, maybe they can discuss the issues really at the center here of their disagreement, which would be the war with Israel and Hamas. That's kind of what's at the center of all of this. And I was hoping there would be something productive, but as you can imagine, it was just a firestorm, and there was really not a whole lot of light. It was mostly just heat. It was supposed to be about Israel, right, and the war, but it turned out to be ad hominems the vast majority of the time. So one other thing before we actually take a look at the debate itself. Rabbi Shmuley, right after the debate, before it actually came out, but after they did the debate, so after they taped it, he jumped on social media and it was immediately like doing tweet after tweet after tweet, and even videos saying, hey, Candace Owens illegally brought a laptop to the debate. And I'm just thinking, wait, illegally? How does that even work? Like, are there laws against this? But okay, what it is she's sitting in the room that she normally does her shows with, and she normally has the laptop like right here. So she didn't bring anything. She just sat down where she normally is, because it's basically being, I think, filmed from her home, where she's at. And she already has a laptop there. Now, Maybe it would have been fine if she had given them a heads up and said, hey, I do have this laptop here and I intend to use it. Is that okay? And then Rabbi Shmuley would have also had an opportunity to have a laptop. That's fair. But what ended up happening is Candace Owens has access to a laptop and can Google stuff during the debate. Shmuley doesn't have any of that. So he kind of felt like, oh, this was a setup. Piers Morgan and the producers set me up. They were siding with Candace Owens, and it's like, I think you're going a little too far with it. I get the point about the laptop. Yeah, it would have been fair to just say, hey, is it okay if I use a laptop in advance? That would be something that Candace Owens should have asked. It is somewhat unfair to just all of a sudden start Googling something and you didn't tell people in advance you were going to have access to a laptop. So she could have done better there. Be that as it may, with that being said, I don't think this was some kind of setup from Piers Morgan to where it's a 2-against-1. But I will say that I did notice that Piers was a lot more critical and asked a lot more critical questions of Rabbi Shmuley. I did not see him do that of Candace Owens. So that part did seem a little one-sided. I don't think it's one-sided when it comes to the laptop thing. I don't think Piers had anything to do that, or the producers. But I do feel like, okay, he was a lot harder on Rabbi Shmuley than he was on Candace. And in reality, there's a lot of stuff there that he could have questioned Candace about, and he did not. So I do kind of feel it was a little lopsided. Not too much, but it was there and it was noticeable. And I will give Rabbi Shmuley that point. Although I'm critical of both of them. I'm not on either one of their positions. I'm not on either of their sides. I'm critical of both of them. But I will give that to him. Now, what often happens in criticism, however, of Rabbi Shmuley is he overshoots. He overreaches. What often happens with Shmuley is he overstates his claims and criticisms against Candace. And what she can do at that point is just back out and say, well, I never said that. And in reality, okay, yeah, you never said that, but you did say this other stuff over here. And that will end up getting lost in the mix, because then the debate is, well, you said that I said this. Well, okay, fine. You didn't say that, but you did say this over here. And this stuff over here that was said and is a legitimate criticism of Candace ends up getting lost in the shuffle. And that's unfortunate. So Shmuley often overstates his claims and criticisms against Candace. Candace understates and downplays what she has said in the past about something, where in reality, there's some serious stuff to criticize Candace Owens about. And I've done that on this show before. There's some serious stuff to criticize her about, but you don't get to go over that whenever you overstate the case and you say she's this arch anti-Semite Holocaust denier. It's like, okay, that's going too far. That's not accurate. But there are some legitimate criticisms about things she has said about Jewish people, the Jewish community, and the Holocaust. There are legitimate concerns, but you're overstating it when you make those very strong claims. And all she has to do is just say, well, no, I don't deny the Holocaust. I affirm, that the Holocaust happened. And there now, Shmuley looks like he's doesn't know what he's talking about, where in reality, there's a grain of truth to what he's trying to say, but he's just overstating it. And that's my problem with Shmuley. And that's also my problem with Candace. She's not being entirely upfront with people about what she has said and where there are real criticisms. Okay, so now that we got all that out of the way, laptop gate, overstating the case, downplaying the claims, let's actually dive in. I'm going to skip the opening statements. The reason why is it's about 12 minutes here of nothing but ad hominems. Okay. All right. Rabbi Shmuley just went, he started out first. He just went straight for the ad hominems. And of course, when she came back for her opening statement, she felt like that wasn't okay. And so she decries his ad hominems and the use of ad hominems, but then turns into, uses her opening statement to communicate ad hominems against Rabbi Shmuley. And so she ends up doing the exact same thing that Shmuley did effectively. And so, in other words, both of them didn't like ad hominems. They didn't like being attacked personally. They decried it in the other person, and yet they both did it to each other. And so that wasn't really productive. So I'm just going to skip opening statements. Around the 11-minute mark, you do have Piers who's like, okay, I'm tired of this. I want to actually get to the subject here, which is the war. Let's get past the ad hominems. Where are we at with the war is the question he asked Shmuley. And for a whole minute, Rabbi Shmuley just completely ignores the question, goes right back into ad hominems. So, this is kind of how it went for a while. But some of these ad hominems are important to consider, so let's take a look at them. Let's start around the 12-minute, 50-second mark, and let's go ahead and dive in, because they're going to start to talk about things like Candace Owens and her position on Jews versus her father-in-law's position on the Jewish people. Now, I did a whole video on that reviewing her father-in-law's statements, and it was implicitly a shot at Candace Owens. Candace is denying that. She's downplaying it. She's acting like, no, this wasn't about me. And, it wasn't critical of me or anything like that. We're perfectly fine. Well, in reality, he only posted his statement in favor of the Jewish people and in favor of Israel. Explicitly, he says, because of a high-profile member of his who said some pretty controversial things. So he had to come out and very clearly say, hey, look, I'm not an anti-Semite. And then he condemns anti-Semitism. And a lot of what he was condemning is actually some of the things that Candace asserts and says. And so it was very clear, although it is implicit, but it is clear, it is clearly implied that he is rebuking Candace Owens. She won't own it, but in reality, that is what was happening. And Shmuley points that out. She's going to be in denial about it, and oddly so is Piers Morgan. All right, so let me go ahead and share my screen, and let's start to take a look at some of these clips together. And please let me know if there are any audio issues in the chat. So let me know if y'all are having any difficulty hearing it. Okay, well, let's go ahead and begin around the 12-minute, 50-second mark. Beginning now.
When one of your guests calls someone else filth, I think that you as an English gentleman should step in. But let me answer your question. No less, the only thing of Christ that Candace Owens has actually fulfilled comes from Matthew chapter 10, verse 35, where Jesus says, I've come to separate and create conflict between a woman and her mother-in-law and father-in-law. My answer to your question about Gaza is that Lord Michael Farmer, a courageous British peer who happens to be Candace Owens' father-in-law, issued one of the most robust and beautiful defenses of Israel that any of us have read since October 7th. He said that, of course, there's a lot of terrible Palestinian casualties. God loves every Palestinian child as much as he loves a Jewish child. He said that Israel has no choice but to fight this war because Hamas hides in residential areas and under nurseries. He said that Israel, the savagery of October 7th, demands a response. He said that Israel is doing exactly the right thing. And he said that he's doing all this in response to a, quote, high-profile member of his family. The attempt to not even mention his daughter-in-law, Candace Owens, because he didn't want to say her name. And he didn't even say, I love my daughter-in-law, but because the British remember Hitler, they remember the Battle of Britain, they remember the V-1 and V-2 rockets. Candace Owens has actually now said that the Nazis were the good guys, and it was the allies, the British, people like yourself, Pierce, who engaged in the ethnic cleansing of 12 million people based on some documentary she watched called The Savage Peace on the BBC, which wasn't even about the Allies. She always distorts. It was about the Czechoslovakia, a country that no longer even exists. And as far as what she said about Michael Jackson, putting an enemies list, that is a total fabrication. It was invented by someone named Dieter Wietzner, who sued Michael Jackson for $64 million, tried to shake him down, and Michael had to pay him $4 million. I worked this.
All right, the reason why you're hearing this discussion about Michael Jackson is Shmuley is saying that Candace accused Shmuley of murdering Michael Jackson. Now, you can actually watch the video that she did just a few days ago, and she does imply that Michael Jackson was murdered, and she does indicate which particular ethnic group she thinks was behind this. And so, again, there are some real criticisms that could be made here, but I think sometimes Shmuley overstates it. Now, he claims he is going to post her actually saying on video that he murdered Michael Jackson. I'm not saying she didn't say that. I just haven't seen that. So We'll see if he produces the receipts there. It was supposedly said on one of those Twitter X Spaces things, so it's not on YouTube or anything like that. So I don't know. We'll see if he produces the receipts.
Save Michael's life. Candace Owens never met Michael Jackson. I was his rabbi for 2 years. I love him. I missed him. I tried to get him off of drugs. She said that I killed him. And talk about the contempt for people struggling with addiction, that she would say the Jews killed Michael Jackson. And with all due respect, Pierce, you have not said that one of those things, that I'm a murderer, a man who doesn't have a speeding ticket, who doesn't have a parking ticket, is a murderer, and the police have to come and the FBI to protect me. Are you going to say...
Here's what I'm going to say to you, Rabbi Shmuley. Once again, you've just singularly failed to answer my question.
And that is true, because Piers over and over and over was trying to steer things back to the issue of Israel and the war in Gaza. And 99% of the time, Shmuley just completely, diverted the attention back to personal issues that he has with Candace Owens. And again, in some of these criticisms that he has, they're not entirely baseless. There are legitimate problems here with Candace Owens, but it's kind of like, I thought this was supposed to be a debate about Israel, not about Candace Owens's views and stuff like that.
So if you're just going to continue every time I ask you a question about the war, which is the point of the debate, to just launch into Candace or her family or whatever, that's your decision. But in the interest of fairness, every time you speak to 3-4 minutes, well, hang on. I'm not going to let Candace respond. If you want to, Candace, look, it is obviously a matter of public record that your father-in-law, Lord Farmer, did post on X what he posted. He concluded by saying, I point out I'm the Christian deputy chair of the Council for Christians and Jews. This was founded in 1942 as a bulwark against anti-Semitism. I mean, do you want to say anything about what your father-in-law posted or anything else that Rabbi Shmuley just said?
Yeah, I'm grateful that he brought that up, and because it's very disturbing to me to see him try to pretend that my father-in-law distanced from me or said something in favor of anything that Rabbi Shmuley is saying. He would never do that.
I'm sorry, she's glossing over this. This was clearly an implicit smack towards Candace Owens. Like, it's very clear that he was undermining the things that she said pretty much the day before on Twitter. And it was in response to the things that she said the day before on Twitter. So it was critical of Candace Owens in a very loving way, in a very professional way, in a very awkward way, because this is her father-in-law. But she's trying to downplay that instead of actually engaging what she said and what he said. She hasn't done that today, to this day. She doesn't do it here. She doesn't do it on her show. She doesn't actually show, okay, here's what Lord Farmer said, and here's what I said, and here's how we're actually still, we're not actually going after each other. He's not going after me. He's not criticizing me. She doesn't do any of that. But I did that. And so I showed actually he is being critical of her.
It is very important to understand that, he does support Israel, and he has reaffirmed his support for Israel. And you can imagine that within any family, you have disagreements about things, but fundamentally, it's all love, and it's good for us to have these conversations. Prior to him posting the statement, I had just gotten back from vacation with him, literally 48 hours earlier. There was something incredibly demonic about a person trying to use the Bible at the beginning of a statement, as he did, trying to quote scripture and immediately following it up by trying to pull a family apart.
Okay, well, let me stop there and just say, okay, I do think that he's being critical of Candace. I don't think that this is somehow pulling their family apart. I think that they're still going to be a family. And so if anybody is trying to say that the family is broken or something because of this, I think that's overstating the case. But I do think that he is being critical of her. But I'm sure they're still going to have get-togethers and be cool and family and all that. It might be awkward, but I'm sure that's the case. Now, she says, oh, this is demonic, tearing apart families. I'm sorry, but Candace Owens has supported a lot of evil stuff. And she tries to present herself as this holy figure fighting a holy war, when in reality, she's not always on the right side. And so, okay, maybe some people who are attacking her and her family, that's below the belt. Maybe there is some demonic element behind that, but that's not to say that she's on the side of the angels. Not exactly.
I mean, that is utterly unholy. And I think the question of holiness and what is holy is relevant to this discussion. I think this is a conversation that a lot of people are having as well. Look, prior to October 7th, I don't think many people were engaged with what is happening in Israel. You know, we kind of all said the same thing. Israel is our friend and ally. I count myself among those people. Post October 7th, the world, and especially I would say Zionists in media, were demanding that we all pay attention. And when we began to pay attention, we didn't like what we saw. You cannot tell me to ever feel comfortable with 18,000 children being ruthlessly murdered. You can't get me to feel comfortable as a Christian with the amount of more explosives dropped, tons of explosives dropped on Gaza.
Now, did you hear that? She said 18,000 children murdered. Now, murder is intentional. So she's asserting and assuming that there is an intention on part of the IDF as a whole, not individual IDF soldiers, but like the whole thing. There's an intention to murder all these children. Quite the claim. One that is gratuitous, but shouldn't be. One that I would challenge and have often challenged. I have seen some instances where I do think there was some deliberate targeting on part of individuals from the IDF, and I've been critical of that. But I haven't seen evidence that this goes all the way to the top or is something that is programmatic or is representative of a whole for the IDF. However, I have seen on part of Hamas an intention to target civilians. And the stuff that's being taught to Palestinian children, often in Palestine, in Gaza. Oh, there's definitely an intention to target civilians there, but she's not critical of that. And she's not speaking about that. So she overstates her case, overstates her criticisms, doesn't apply those actual criticisms that really do land on the side of Hamas and many Palestinians, not all Palestinians, but many Palestinians. Doesn't apply those criticisms to them. And then ultimately, she's calling on Israel to back off and Israel to stop doing what it's doing. But she's not calling Hamas to do that. If Hamas surrendered and turned the hostages over, it would be over. She's not doing that. She should be calling Hamas to stop doing what they're doing, to turn over the hostages and to surrender. She should be doing that. Instead, she's calling on Israel to stop. And that's just not reasonable in light of what we know what would happen if Hamas is allowed to continue to do what it does and has claimed it is going to do. So I think she's on the wrong side when it comes to this situation. And it would have been helpful if Shmuley had focused more on this rather than the personal criticisms that he has of her.
Then were dropped in Hiroshima. This doesn't make sense to me. Gaza is 30 miles long, 7 miles wide. It's incredibly dense population. And this is, by the way, according to Haaretz, that 40,000 Palestinians have been murdered. I believe they're getting those numbers from the Gaza Health Ministry. And here's what I would like to say to you, Rabbi, since you're quoting scripture, okay? The one that's relevant to me is, woe unto them that call evil good and good evil, that put darkness for light and light for darkness. And if you'd like to dive into a little more scripture, I think what's relevant is Revelation 3:9. Behold, I will make them of the synagogue of Satan, which say they are Jews and are not, but do lie. And I'm speaking directly to you, Rabbi Shmuley.
All right, so she's not even dried off from her baptism yet. This is a neophyte, and she's trying to present herself as a seasoned Christian who knows the Bible and as this leading figure in a holy war against evil in the world. This is one of my problems with Candace. It's a train wreck, and it's a disaster waiting to happen. And I've spoken about how I think we're going to see her become more and more radicalized, and she's going to end up going down the sedevacantist route. Be that as it may, she's in no position to speak in any kind of way as some kind of Christian figure right now. Although she's going to conferences. I mean, she hadn't even done her baptism yet. Wasn't even baptized yet and was already committed to speaking at Catholic conferences as a Catholic figure. And so this is not appropriate for a neophyte. I don't think it's appropriate for her to be trying to use the Bible and assert herself as some kind of Christian leader in this holy war, when in reality, it's like, yeah, you know what? You're not ready for that. Maybe 10, 20 years from now. You're not ready for that right now, Candace. Stop it. And somebody needs to call her out for that. Unfortunately, people aren't really doing that. So I'm going to here. Now, Of course, we saw there a quote from Isaiah, and then also a quote from the book of Revelation. And specifically, the one from Revelation is talking about some Jews at that time who were persecuting Christians. And Jesus says in the book of Revelation to the church that that particular epistle was written to, he says, I will make them bow at your feet. And he calls them a synagogue of Satan. And that's true. That's absolutely true. Obviously, that's not of every single Jew. It's in a particular context. Now, she does kind of mitigate her claim and says, I'm talking specifically about you, Rabbi Shmuley. Later on Twitter, she applies it more broadly. But here, at least in the debate, she restricts it to a comment about Rabbi Shmuley. So what often happens, however, with the application of this verse is you'll see some people who, maybe some of the guys at the Daily Wire, who think that non-Jewish Christians can't use this verse at all to be critical of any Jewish person. I think that's ridiculous. If it's in the Bible, you could use it. If the shoe fits, if it's true, yeah, you can use it. On the other extreme, there's some people who think, oh, that applies to every single Jew. That's also going way too far. That doesn't apply to every single Jew. So, all right, but let's continue. Let's see what he says in response to the synagogue of Satan.
The fact that you would try to say, I am Jewish and this is what I believe, and do and say the things that you are doing. People can see and hear evil, and what you are doing right now is an act of evil. The lies that you are telling, not just on me, but also on my family members, are a good example for the world to see what we are referring to when we call something radical Zionism.
Okay, Rabbi Shmuley.
Okay, and okay, thank you. And of course, Pierce, there was nothing ad hominem about my being demonic. This is a 2 against 1 debate. I expected that.
It's not a 2 against 1 debate.
And I will, excuse me, no, it's a 2 against 1
You've
debate.
You've made no attempt to answer my question.
No, Pierce,
Candace,
let me
Candace
speak.
has been trying to answer my question.
Just said,
you're not.
Candace just said, Candace, filth, demonic. There's nothing ad hominem about that. You are correct. You're right, Pierce. Candace Owens just said that Israel dropped more bombs on Gaza than on Hiroshima. Hiroshima was an atomic bomb, Candace. You know, why don't you just read Wikipedia? Israel has nuclear weapons. They've never used them, so I have no idea what you're talking about. Now let's look at Israel's justified defense. Israel admits, and even Hamas admits, to a 1-to-1 civilian to combatant ratio of civilian casualties, which is a tragedy. It shouldn't even be 1. But remember, Hamas fires their rockets from nurseries. The United States and Afghanistan.
And keep that in mind, because I see people in the chat saying, you know, the IDF have blown up refugee camps and hospitals and schools and stuff like that. And then they just ignore the fact that, yeah, Hamas is embedding itself in those places. Shouldn't you be calling out Hamas? This is why I don't appreciate terrorist sympathizers like that in the comment section. Yeah, not buying it. You need to be critical of Hamas. You need to be critical of the people who embed themselves in civilian territory and in nurseries and schools and hospitals and stuff like that. Call them out. Not buying it. All right, but let's continue.
Had a 4-to-1 ratio of civilians murdered for every 1 combatant. In the Korean War, it was 5-to-1. In Iraq, it was at least 2-to-1. Israel has the lowest per capita ratio of combatants to civilians. Candace should acknowledge that. That is what we call a fact.
But you should also, okay, hang on. You should also acknowledge then that there is a unique demographic in Gaza, where of the 2 million people who live there, half of them are under 18. So that's a very different demographic to any of the other scenarios you're talking about. That is what's caused so much international opprobrium against Israel, is the fact that so many children, pro rata in the civilian death count, have been killed. It's that people are so exercised about, and rightly, because what's happened here is obvious.
Now, I think it's horrible that any child is killed. But let's be honest here. Is it the IDF that wants to kill children, or is it Hamas? Have you seen some of the stuff that they play in Gaza in their education system? I have. I've taken a look at a lot of their material, and they are more than happy to kill their own children, to make them shaheeds, to make them these martyrs so they go immediately to heaven. They're more than happy to sacrifice their own children. So there is, among some, not all Palestinians, but some, a culture of death and very little value of one's own children. And as a father, I abhor that kind of stuff. I'm shocked. But for them, they cultivate that in many cases. Not all Palestinians, but many do. And you can't deny it. Whereas I don't see that equally in the case with the IDF or the people in Israel. There's flaws there, there's issues there, but I don't see that same culture. I don't see that same problem. So if we're going to talk about children, we need to talk about that issue.
Yes. Hamas, yes, they've embedded themselves in civilian territory. Yes, they built all these tunnels. None of these things are to be disputed. But the problem with going after Hamas in the way that Israel has been doing is that the collateral damage, as they would put it, to so many thousands of children has now tested the patience of the world to a degree that vast quantities of the world are against it and want this to stop. That's the reality.
I think that's a very fair question. You know, and I don't like whataboutism. But Candace Owens never spoke out once against Bashar al-Assad, who killed 600,000 Arabs, and he actually gassed to death children. He targeted them with mustard and poison gas. You remember that President Obama said that's a red line, and then he gave it to Putin to get rid of those weapons of mass
which was
destruction.
completely
God bless
wrong,
President Trump, who actually wait, just a second. Just President Trump, God bless him, actually fired 59 cruise missiles when Assad did that. It's funny because people say that President Trump is anti-Muslim. He's the only one who protected Muslim life. Pierce, Hamas has ruled since 2006. They won an election jointly with the PA. They took the Palestinian Authority representatives and threw them off of rooftops. They then subjected the Palestinians, 1.5 million Palestinians of Gaza, to the most ruthless persecution that we've ever seen. They stole all their money. Ismail Haniyeh, who was assassinated in Tehran, is worth $4 billion. Now he's fighting with Erdogan, his kids, over who's going to inherit that. Khalid Mashal is worth $3 billion. You and I both know that the Palestinians of Gaza got triple the amount per capita, prorated for our times, of the Marshall Plan. All of that money was stolen to build tunnels. There isn't one bomb shelter. The reason why people are dying in Gaza is because that money was used to buy penthouses in Doha, Qatar. There isn't one bomb shelter that from Hamas. Hamas shoots and murders anyone who challenges their authority. They were elected in 2006 to a 4-year term. It's now 20 years later. Hamas specifically, and that's why they're being condemned by the Palestinians right now. They want Palestinian children to die, because the more they die, the more you will condemn me and Israel. But let's remember, Pierce, your parents are part of the greatest generation. Winston Churchill was told by the Americans, don't bomb German cities, Hamburg, Dresden, etc. at night. You can't see what you're bombing. Do what we Americans have, which is precision daytime bombing. And Churchill said, no, my pilots are more important. We need the RAF.
All right.
And he flattened German cities. And he is considered today the greatest British statesman
by
of the 20th century.
By the way, the flattening of cities like Dresden was widely condemned at the time, including by many people in Britain, and led to the establishment of the Geneva Convention.
Dresden was the last month of the war, but before that, Hamburg and everything else was not condemned.
It led to the establishment of the Geneva Convention after World War II, specifically to stop that kind of thing happening again. So I'm glad you raised that example. Candace, you've got over 3 minutes.
Do you condemn?
All right, here's an important question. Watch what Shmuley asks of Piers on the question of Churchill.
And Winston Churchill as a war criminal for Dresden?
No, absolutely not. No.
Why not? You just said that it was wrong.
I was
Winston Churchill as a war criminal for Dresden? Please, you said not, but why?
If you're both going to answer the same question, let me be clear. Winston Churchill was not a war criminal, right? But some of the ways that
Why not? He bombed Dresden and killed 25,000 people.
Yeah, he also saved the world from Adolf Hitler and the Nazis.
Oh, he saved the world. So Israel's saving the Middle East from Hamas, Islamic Jihad, Iran.
But it's not, though.
Hezbollah.
Israel's not doing.
This is a really bad answer from Piers Morgan. Really bad answer, and he should know better as a Catholic. As a Catholic in moral theology, the ends do not justify the means. The end does not justify the means. So you save Europe. Okay, that doesn't mean you get to indiscriminately bomb a whole bunch of civilians, right? And target civilians. You don't get to do that. So deliberate targeting of civilians is wrong no matter who does it. Whether it's Israel, whether it is the British, whether it's the United States, it's always wrong, period. End of story. And there's nothing wrong with calling that out and criticizing a government for doing it, whether it's the United States, England, or Israel. Nothing wrong with calling it out. If that is taking place and there is deliberate targeting of civilians, that is wrong. Absolutely. And you don't get to say, well, it's okay if you get this certain outcome. Yeah, no, it doesn't work like that in Catholic theology, in Catholic moral theology. If it did, by the way, you could end up having abortions in some cases, right? Well, you can murder this baby in the womb because of this result, right? Fill in the blank. Yeah, it just doesn't work like that. And if it did, that would lead to all sorts of issues. So, yeah, this was a really bad answer on his part. Okay. Let's continue.
No.
Thank you for answering my question.
Well,
Case closed.
All right, let me go to Candace.
If I could just interject here, just to respond to that, I was going to say exactly what you said, Piers. Like, Dresden was considered a Holocaust. It was, in fact, a war crime. And there should be debates about what happened in Dresden. It was absolutely horrific that a bunch of Christians were skipping off, on the eve of Ash Wednesday. And then they were quite literally reduced to ashes. It is wrong. And the fact that you are having to reference a war crime to justify what's happening in Gaza is not a point for you. It's completely awful. When people say, oh, well, look at.
He's not referencing a war crime to justify what's happening in Gaza. He's meeting people on their own terms. He's trying to say, well, if you think this is bad, if what you're saying, if you really believe what you're saying, then do you then condemn this situation? That's all he's doing. He's not granting the premises. He's just, for the sake of a hypothetical argument, asking that. And so, yeah, no, that's misrepresenting Shmuley.
What we did, look at all these other horrific things we did. Why do you care about this horrible thing that's happening? I don't even understand that logic. It's completely ridiculous. Look, there is no person in good conscience who should be comfortable with the amount of death that's happening in Gaza. And yes.
Right. I don't think anybody should be comfortable with death anywhere, Gaza or anywhere. I agree with Candace on that point. That doesn't, however, address the issue of what should be done, or who is on the right side, loosely speaking here, because there's faults with both sides. There's no purely holy or righteous side here when it comes to the Israel-Hamas war. There just isn't. Both sides have fault. Now, I think one side has more fault than the other, but both sides have fault, and both can be criticized, and nobody needs to be comfortable with any of this. So with that, I can agree, but that doesn't really address the issue of, but what should be done?
If you are going to correlate it to Dresden, that would be a fair comparison, except much more has been dropped on Gaza than was dropped in Dresden. So is it fair to call what's happening in Gaza a Holocaust? Is that what we're looking after when you have this nonstop onslaught? And it's completely ridiculous to say, oh, well, this is happening because of Hamas. Let's be very clear. It is happening because the Israeli government will not stop bombing them.
Oh, no, it's an overly simplistic way of looking at it. It's actually happening because of terrorist acts on part of Hamas. And then some people want to take it a step further and say, but they did that because of this and this and this and this. And we can get into that whole debate. But yeah, no, it's not just simply because of what Israel is doing. Why is Israel doing what it's doing? And why does it have to take this kind of approach? That's where she really needs to focus, and she's not doing that. So she'll have some criticisms of Hamas, but she doesn't see that actually you should be spending more time criticizing Hamas than you should be the IDF, because that's the real source of the issue here.
Okay, so you had a very sympathetic audience all around the world, myself included, when October 7th happened. There's not a single person that should or could justify the terrorist acts that was enacted by Hamas. But the collective punishment that is being assigned to the Gazans, the Palestinians living in Gaza, is also unacceptable. And the entire world should condemn it, and it should be made to stop. And I do believe that a radical fringe has taken hold of Israel. And further evidence of that, by the way, is that we are not even allowed to critique Israel without having people like Rabbi Shmuley, which I never said he threatened to murder me, but he has threatened me for 2 years, essentially trying to bully people into their belief that they have a right.
You never said that I threatened to murder you? We're going to post every
No, I never said that you threatened to murder me. Don't cut me off. I did not cut you off.
Okay, I will not cut you off. Go ahead,
I did not cut you off.
I don't recall her ever saying that. That doesn't mean she didn't say that. I haven't watched everything Candace has done. Maybe she has said that. I don't recall a particular time where she has said that, though. So unless Shmuley can really produce receipts for that one, I have to just go with, Unless you can provide your source, it's Mickey Mouse, as they say, right? You can say anything. You can say that, you created a spaceship last night and went to the moon last night and came back this morning. You could say that unless you can actually provide evidence. I'm sorry, I can't believe it. So I think Shmuley needs to provide the receipts here.
Okay. The point is that now what's happening across America is that you have Zionist organizations that are threatening and bullying people because people are taking a stance against this act against humanity.
Okay, now there's some truth here, right? And by the way, it goes both ways. The bullying goes both ways. But yeah, I have seen some people who are Zionists who will go after anyone who's critical of Zionism or the state of Israel and will paint them out to be an anti-Semite when I don't think that in some cases that's always, logically follows or has been demonstrated. So there's some truth to what Candace is saying here. Sometimes some people can be overly vilified. I don't think that there's an issue with criticizing Israel or the IDF. I think that that's perfectly fine. By the way, as you're going to see here in a moment, Rabbi Shmuley also has no problem with criticizing Israel in and of itself. He doesn't see that as anti-Semitic or anything like that. And I agree, it is not anti-Semitic necessarily to criticize Israel. Now, you do find anti-Semites who will often veil their anti-Semitism under criticisms of Israel, but that's not everybody. There are people who are not anti-Semitic, but will criticize Israel. So just because you criticize Israel doesn't mean you're anti-Semitic. And sometimes, yeah, some Zionists are too quick to pull the anti-Semitism card. And yeah, you know what? You don't do your side any favors when you do that. But I see it both ways. Now, I've seen some people, go from the opposite extreme. They'll say, hey, if you criticize anything with Palestine, you're racist. Or you're a colonist or a colonialist, or you're an Islamophobe, or all sorts of stuff. I've seen that. I've even had people on this channel when I've had both Zionists and pro-Palestinians on here who have pulled that card, and it's just like, yeah, you know what? Stop it. That's just ridiculous. You can criticize Palestine without being a racist. You can criticize Islam without being an Islamophobe. I mean, I just don't buy those tactics because it's the same kind of tactics that the woke mob uses. So it's a two-way street. It's on both sides. I do have to admit that I see more viciousness and more slander coming from the pro-Hamas side than I do the pro-Israel side. Now, there is a fair amount of nastiness coming from the pro-Israel side. There is that. I have seen it. And there is some legitimate criticism. But I want to say, you know what? But the lion's share actually comes from the other side. And I think that needs to be highlighted here. All right, let's continue.
Doing is inhumane in Palestine. And so what they're doing is they're saying this person should get fired. This person should lose their job. The Zionist Federation of Australia just asked for me to have my visa banned simply because I don't support what Israel is doing. And if that is what I have to pay, if ultimately what happens, I get my visa banned.
Oh, I found this comment interesting. Jeffrey says, writing names on missiles to kill others is evil. I agree with Candace on this. Interesting. So you actually are on my side because some people have written my name on some of these missiles that they have used in these wars. And they wrote my name on it, mocking me and making fun of me. Interesting. So you're on my side actually here. Okay.
Because Zionism has a lot of money in media, then so be it. It's less of a price than the children in Gaza are paying right now. And as a Christian, I will never support what Bibi Netanyahu is doing.
Right, and what's interesting to me, Rabbi Shmuley, hang on. Yes, but let me just say again, the question I put to you earlier, it's not just people outside Israel who are now heavily criticizing Netanyahu and his government. It is people inside Israel in massive numbers. And so my question for you is, why? Why are so many people inside Israel taking to the streets to demand that Netanyahu stop this war?
I would say two things that they don't really get to. Number one, a lot of those people are going based on what is said more on social media than anything. And that's going to color their criticisms of Israel. Number two, there are legitimate criticisms of Israel, and some people are expressing that. That's why you're going to see Israelis criticizing Israel, because there's some legitimate criticisms, but also because some of them are being impacted by social media more than the facts.
No, they never said he should stop the war. They said there should be a ceasefire
They
to
did.
release the hostages because Israel is a cult. Don't interrupt me, please, Candace. Because Israel is a culture of life. And that's why Israel got into this mess for October 7th. They traded 1,000 murderers, including Yahya Sinwar, who Israel saved at Soroka Hospital in Beersheba when he had a brain tumor. The Hamas Hitler, who's the architect of October 7th, Israel saved his life. It's a culture of life, even for Palestinian murderers. They traded 1,000 for Gilad Shalit. You remember that.
There is more of a culture of life in Israel than there is among Palestinians. Again, broadly speaking here. Broadly speaking. Broadly speaking. And show you video after video after video after video of Palestinians glorifying death, saying they love death more than life. And I don't see that as much as with Israel. That being said, it doesn't mean that Israel is on the perfect side of righteousness either.
And now a whole group is saying, even if it leads to another October 7th, I need my children home. I understand that. Pierce, I have 2 sons fighting in this war. I understand the dangers that are being faced. No one's saying to stop the war, not to destroy Hamas. They're saying call a ceasefire to release the hostages because of their execution. But I must respond. First of all, Candace just said that Israel dropped more bombs on Gaza than on Dresden. What's your source for that? Do you know that in Dresden, there were 1,000 Lancaster bombers sent over 2 nights by Churchill, and then 800 American, that's 1,800 bombs. What's your source that Israel dropped more than on Dresden?
So it's just interesting because you realize that you use Dresden as an
No,
example.
no.
To justify
Answer the
what was
question.
happening
You
in
just
Israel.
made Pierce. This is
I
the
said
question.
more tons
You
of
said that Israel.
explosives.
You just made a blood libel against the Jewish state. Dresden.
Stop it with the blood libel, Rabbi Shmuley. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. There should be like a shock collar every time, Rabbi Shmuley says it, you shock him. Like, stop it. Stop it. You're overstating your case. You're not helping your side. Stop. I'm tired of this one. Are there real blood libels? Yes. Is it fine to call it out when it happens? Yes. Was this a blood libel? Not necessarily. So don't be too quick to jump the gun and use that card. And he uses it non-stop ad nauseum. And it's just like, stop. He constantly is pulling the anti-Semite blood libel card. And when you do that, you weaken it whenever there really is a blood libel and whenever there really is anti-Semitism. As I said yesterday, it's like the racism card with African Americans. When you overplay that card in cases where there isn't racism, you weaken that card for real cases of racism. It's just too much. And so I can kind of sympathize with Candace Owens on this particular point. That being said, there are some anti-Semitic things that she has said. That doesn't necessarily mean she is anti-Semitic, right? A person can say some of those things not knowing it's anti-Semitic. It's possible. There are some things that she has said that are anti-Semitic. There are some blood libels that she has repeated. So there are legitimate criticisms here. That doesn't mean that she necessarily is an anti-Semite. She may or may not be. That's a different question. But just because you say something anti-Semitic doesn't always mean that you are an anti-Semite, because you could be saying something unknowing or not knowing that it is anti-Semitic in nature. Or you could repeat a blood libel not knowing it is the repeating of a blood libel. It's possible that a person could be ignorant here. That being said, I'm not here to defend Candace Owens. I think there's legitimate criticisms here with some of her views about the state of Israel, about Jewish people, about some of the history and relation between Christians and Jewish people. I think there's some real criticisms there. But you can't get to them when Rabbi Shmuley is getting in the way with overstating his case. And when he overstates his case, all she has to do is just say, I'm not an anti-Semite. No, I don't believe a blood libel. No, I don't deny the Holocaust. No, I affirm the Holocaust. No, I affirm, there's some good Jewish people. No, I affirm this and that. That's all she has to do. And then we don't get to the real problems of some of the things that she has said that crosses the line and is too much and is problematic. So Rabbi Shmuley, I don't think, is a really good representative for his side. But I don't think that Candace Owens is a representative of any side either, a good representative of any side. But let's continue.
Can't keep doing this. We can't keep doing this.
Over 2 nights. I am asking you, what is your source? The answer. Okay, don't interrupt me, please. The answer is Pierce. My turn.
Rabbi Shmuley, you can't ask someone a question and then refuse to let them answer.
So I asked for a source. I didn't ask for a question. Go ahead.
We've heard the question.
Absurd. I'm going to respond to what you are saying. This tactic of when anybody brings up anything that Israel is doing is wrong, you get to just scream blood libel and anti-Semitism. And oh my gosh, it's a blood libel. It is not a blood libel to talk about the amount of death and the tons of explosives that have been dropped on the civilians in Palestine. Okay.
I agree with Candace. It's not a blood libel necessarily to address concerns about Israel, about the death toll, about its use of bombs. That's not necessarily a blood libel. There could be legitimate criticism there without any intention of, targeting Jews or anti-Semitism or something like that. It's fine to criticize Israel. I just want to make sure we do so with accurate information and consistently. So that's not necessarily a blood libel. I agree with Candace here. I think that Shmuley's he's going too far. He's overstating the case here.
Okay, that is not a blood libel against
you
Jewish people.
That Israel
this is such a nasty and perverted tactic,
what is your
which
source?
Essentially says I don't have to debate anymore because I get to just call everybody a person who's accusing me of blood libels. Okay, truly, what is happening right now is that the blood of Palestinians is being shed. Okay, that is not a libel against the Jews. That is a fact and a reality against Bibi Netanyahu and this government.
Right. I mean, just, if you're criticizing Israel and the way it's conducting the war, that's not necessarily an attack on Jewish people per se. I agree there. But she's understating her claims elsewhere. I do think she goes beyond that. She does go beyond just criticisms of Israel. That being said, I agree in theory with what she's saying here, even though I don't agree with the facts. I will point out that but her emphasis is more on Israel here than it is on Hamas, and that's a problem. That's a huge issue. And what she needs to be doing is putting the emphasis on Hamas,
which has gone extreme in their response to October 7th. So stop this tactic.
Understood. Pierce, can I now have my turn again? All I asked was the source. Clearly, she has none. It was invented out of whole cloth. That's what a blood libel is. A blood libel is when Candace Owens says that the actual medieval blood libel, that Jews killed Christians and drank their blood, she actually believes that.
She didn't say drank their blood. She didn't say that, but she did repeat the issue of, Jewish people basically kidnapping Catholics on Passover and murdering them. But she wants to couch it as, well, that's not a blood libel and it's not anti-Semitic because it's actually not all Jewish people. It's the Frankists who infiltrated the Jewish culture. And so it's not actually Judaism and Jewish people. It's the Frankists, and the Frankists have infiltrated all the religions. And it's a ridiculously bad theory. It's laughable. It's not factual. And I want to say, you know what? Yeah, right now she's making that qualification. You give it a year, that mask is going to slip, and it's no longer going to be, well, it's Frankists infiltrating Judaism. It's going to end up being Jewish people. It's just going to end up straight up being blood libel. I do think she's in that direction, unless she takes a turn, repents, and starts to do better research. Until then, I do think going down this trajectory, she's going to drop the Frankist stuff, and it is going to go into full-blown anti-Semitism. Right now, though, she's kind of hiding behind well, I'm not criticizing all Jewish people. I'm just criticizing Israel. I'm not criticizing all Jewish people. I'm just criticizing the Frankists who infiltrated the Jewish. Right now she's hiding behind that. I don't think it's going to last very long. I think eventually that one's going to drop, and it's just going to be all about Jews at that point. But we'll see. Hopefully I'm wrong, and she will repent to this and turn the other way and do better research. All right, let's continue.
She said, please don't interrupt me.
She actually
says that there were Christian bodies found all over Europe. When she said that I am not trying to kill her, we will post right after this, where she said it at least on 8 occasions. That's why she's being investigated by the FBI. because you can lie about me, you can call me filth, and Pierce won't, you know, and you can call me psychotic. I've never said that about you. But what you can do is incite violence against my family. You have repeatedly said I'm trying to kill you. You said the Jews killed JFK. You said if the Jews killed JFK,
you said all this
and we couldn't protect the president. Okay, wait one second.
Can we get back to the debate
for a moment? No, wait. Let's just go back for a moment. No, Pierce, I have to respond to things.
Would you like a
when
source?
Candace says that it is when Candace says it is demonic.
You wanted the source from Candace.
I never got.
You
I
wanted
never,
the
I never got between.
Rabbi Shmuley, you wanted the source from Candace. I think she's.
You will
I
not
think
let
she
me
has
speak.
one. Well, why don't you let her answer? I think she has one.
Let me fact check this source as well. So 70,000
Yes, I want to see where Israel
Let
dropped
her
more
answer,
bombs
please.
on Gaza than Dresden. Go
70,000
ahead.
tons of explosive have been dropped on the Gaza Strip. Let's see
And
how many
Dresden?
tons of explosives were dropped on Dresden.
Yeah, I don't think this is a really good argument on part of Candace. Trying to determine how many tons of bombs were used in one situation versus tons of bombs in another doesn't really do anything. The question more is going to be in, you know, the intention, is there deliberate targeting, stuff like that, the context, that's when those things will factor more, and not just straight up, well, here's how many tons were used here, here's how many tons were used there. That doesn't really move the needle for me. You need to get into the question of, was there a deliberate intention to target civilians on part of the IDF? Was there a deliberate intention to target civilians on part of England, you know, with Dresden and stuff like that? That's where you need to focus, not so much on how many tons were used. That doesn't really accomplish much.
1 second.
You mean she said it and now she's fact checking it? You're kidding me, right?
Well, you're asking me to give you the direct source live, and I'm going to look it up for you.
I
So
don't,
give me
I don't,
1
have, I don't have a
second.
computer on me. I don't have a computer on me. This is ridiculous.
Let her finish.
This is a cheat
and
sheet.
answer
This
the
is
question.
absurd.
Let her answer the question.
Go ahead.
Candace.
So 2,700 tons of bombs were dropped on Dresden in an 800 bomber air raid. And that is according to Britannica, the encyclopedia.
And what was
as a
the
source.
tonnage of bombs dropped in Gaza?
In Gaza, it was 70,000 tons of.
Okay, that doesn't mean anything though. Although in this case, more was dropped on Dresden than, you know, on Gaza. But to me, that doesn't mean anything. That doesn't mean that somehow Dresden is somehow more evil than what's going on in Israel. Actually, it could be what's going on in Gaza is more evil than what happened with Dresden. Because you have to look at a situation like, okay, civilian casualties, the intention to target civilians, stuff like that, more than just how many bombs were used. That doesn't really tell me anything one way or another.
Explosives were dropped in the Gaza Strip, and I got that from CNN.
Through the duration of the war today,
Okay.
is that the timescale?
Yes.
Okay, so Rabbi Shmuley,
Which
that would
they're
seem to
saying
be
has surpassed
So
the
let's be clear. Let's be
Dresden,
clear. So over
Hamburg, and
11
London during
months,
World War
she's comparing an 11-month war to a single night in Dresden. That's clearly absurd. I'm glad that she has her cheat sheet, her computer in front of her. But notice, she made this
Well, you called it a
statement
blood libel.
not knowing what she was talking
what
about.
she
Just a moment,
said.
please.
Hang on,
Please don't interrupt me.
hang on. What she said, to be clear, was that the
It's also in the New York Times.
Israeli Defense Force had dropped more bombs on Gaza than were dropped on Dresden. That is true. Do you accept that, Rabbi Shmuley?
You know, Pierce, I find
you
this an
accept it?
astonishing debate.
You asked.
Wait,
asked for the proof.
wait. First
Do
of
you
all,
accept that's true?
first of all, I don't.
Well, maybe I heard the numbers wrong. Did he say there was more dropped on Gaza than on Dresden? I'd have to go back and listen. Maybe I misheard. But even then, that still doesn't tell you, okay, which one is more immoral. The amount of bombs used doesn't necessarily tell you which one is more immoral.
Wait. What do you mean it's true? Because she said it's true?
No, do you accept
Do you
that's
have fact
true?
checkers?
The New York Times says it's
Is this
true.
a serious show? Wait. Every time I
You
try to
asked
speak,
for a source. You
stop
called
me.
it a blood libel. You asked for a source. Fortunately, we had time to look it up.
Excuse me, you are interrupting me. She made a definitive statement. She admitted she had no source. She had to then use her computer. It's absurd
I
that she
didn't
has a
say I had no
computer
source.
during
I
this
just said I
debate.
had to
look it up.
Because she had to look it up. 1 second.
But she was
Now
right.
she's saying that over an 11-month war. No, we don't know that she's right because your fact checkers haven't checked it, and my fact checkers haven't checked it. But let's just go back for a.
All right, so he's really on this one. And if you watch his YouTube after this, his Twitter, every single post is about the laptop and the fact that she Googled this. Okay, yeah, all right. I concede that you should warn people, hey, I got a laptop. Is it okay for me to use it? Just to be fair to the other person. Yeah, I grant that, but he makes too much out of it. The laptop didn't make or break this debate. It did not. What she Googled did not make or break this debate. if Shmuley lost the debate, it's not because of a laptop. It's because of Shmuley. If Candace won the debate, it's not because of a laptop. It's because of Candace. And so the laptop, he's making too much out of it, even though there's a grain of truth to it. It's like, yeah, I wouldn't focus too much on that. And a lot of people have pointed out, well, because the fact that he's harping on this too much shows that he realized he lost the debate. In some ways, I think that he kind of lost just because he makes too many claims that are overstated, and then she can just come back and deny. And in reality, she can kind of deny those things, but then she downplays her side and isn't fully upfront with some things she said elsewhere. And so, but for that reason, since he overstates his claims and he's the one making the bulk of the claims and she's just kind of there on the defense, he's not proving his assertions. Well, you're going to lose, because if you're not proving these assertions and the person there is just sitting there denying it, well, yeah, you're de facto going to lose that debate. You need to come with receipts. So if you're going to come to this debate and hijack it, instead of talking about the Israel issue, and you're just going to talk about the problems with Candace, you should have come with actual receipts, which he did not do. And for that reason, I would say he lost. Not because he's on the side of error and Candace is on the side of truth or the other way around, but rather just because he didn't substantiate his claims as much as he should have. And he was the main one making the claims.
Moment. Israel was attacked in the most savage way, and women were gang raped, their breasts were cut off. Candace recently had a guest on who even denies that women were raped. Now she's saying it's in the New York Times. She said the other day that the New York Times lied and fabricated about the mass rape of women. She had the former press secretary of Bernie Sanders who denies that. Now she suddenly likes the New York Times. You are speaking to the #1 critic of the New York Times in America. And by the way, this is a typical thing. Candace will say there's no racism in America. Then she will sue, which she did, the Stanford, Connecticut Board of Education for a $40,000 settlement against racism. She then went on a show and fabricated and said it wasn't a settlement. It was actually for tutors for 1 month. You tell me which tutors are paid $40,000 per month. She will say that I have no right to bring up her family. First of all, I didn't. It was her own father-in-law who condemned her. But she can bring up Brigitte Macron. She can bring up Emmanuel. She can destroy their marriage. Obsess, and you were very good on that, Pierce, challenging her. She can destroy other people's marriages. And you know what's also interesting?
Hang on.
Wait.
Don't just keep talking.
One final point. The day after October 7th, she said nothing for a few days, never condemned it.
Yeah.
And when you asked her on the show, she said, Pierce, I never talk about anything international. Is Brigitte Macron an American?
But
so
you
she
just...
Yeah, that was a pretty weak response from Candace. And I do think that was telling, to say I'm just not going to talk about international politics and stuff like that. But you know what? You don't have a problem talking about it when it comes to criticizing Israel. Maybe she just meant at that time she didn't talk about international affairs and politics, but I bet we could pull up some footage from at that time her doing just that. So yeah, I'm not buying her response, and I do think she could be pressed more on that. Here's where Pierce could have pressed her more on that particular point, but he doesn't. He presses Rabbi Shmuley more, but he doesn't press her as much.
Think about the genitals of the First Lady of France for months, but not condemn the gang rape of Jewish women?
I've already said to Candace, I don't believe a word of the Brigitte Macron thing. What I would say about what you've just quoted Lord Farmer as saying, you said that he condemned Candace in the statement he put on X. He didn't condemn her. I just read it again, and there's no condemnation of his daughter-in-law. He simply says,
"You're kidding." Read the first line. Read the first line.
In view of public comments from a high-profile member of my family, I want to put my own views on anti-Semitism and Israel's current military campaign in Gaza on public record. Where's the condemnation?
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So where's the condemnation?
Thank you. So let's get the timeline. Candace says she was on vacation
Where did he condemn
with her father-in-law 2 days before.
Where did he condemn her?
You and I can read between the lines on any press statement.
I'm not reading between the lines.
Number one, she says,
you said he condemned her.
A high profile.
I've just shown you he didn't condemn her.
He absolutely condemned her.
No, he didn't.
He doesn't once say it's my daughter-in-law Candace, and I love her, but we disagree. Number two, he went on to say that Israel has every right. He was distancing himself for her repulsive.
Okay, this part is true, and this is where Candace and Piers are in denial. He was clearly, Candace Owens' father-in-law was clearly distancing himself from Candace Owens. Why? Because he says that he's doing it because of Candace Owens, and because he's denying certain things that Candace has said. That necessarily means he is in a very nice way, maybe in a way that's not disruptive to the family, doesn't break their family relationship, but he is distancing himself publicly from what she has said there.
No, he gave his own opinion.
Anti-Semitism.
He gave his own opinion.
Why did he start?
Yeah, but his opinion was completely contrary to Candace Owens and was intentionally asserted because it was contrary to Candace Owens' peers. Like, come on, are you kidding me? He's not just giving an opinion out of nowhere.
Why did he start by saying, in light of a high-profile
member of my family? He gave his own opinion. He didn't condemn her. I didn't even name her.
He distanced himself from Candace Owens.
Let me ask Candace a different question, which is this. Candace, why is it, do you think, that so many people in the Jewish community believe that you are anti-Semitic?
And before I answer that, look at this nonsense. Some guy named Honorable Soul, which clearly is a dishonorable person, as you're about to see. This channel does not believe Israel needs to be held accountable for their evil also. You're just a liar. You're just a liar. You're not an honorable soul. You're a liar and a slanderer. And so my question is, what makes you so irrational that causes you to do these things? Honest question. What produces a side to constantly lie and slander like this? This is what I mean by, yeah, you got some nasty Zionists who say some nasty things, but I see the nastiness more from the other side. And this is a perfect example of it. What causes this kind of irrational response? Why are you so afraid of any pushback? That's so weird.
I think that's actually a very good question. And just to go back, I'm going to answer your question. I just want to make sure people are recognizing, because he said a lot of stuff there. He's not able to counter. He essentially tried to hold me to looking up the sources. We've now found the sources, and it's the BBC, it's the New York Times, and it is the Euromed Human Rights Monitor.
We have found no sources, and we'll fact check it afterward. You looked it up during the show.
70,000 tons of bombs were dropped on Gaza, and per the BBC, the British aircraft dropped 4,000 tons of bombs on Dresden. So just for clarity,
in a single night, not 11 months. In a single night, correct.
Please don't cut me off. I have not cut you off. He called that a blood libel because that is a strategy, which is meant to just distract people from the truth or looking into it. So you say everything you say is a blood libel. Now, to answer your question, Piers, I think that's a very good question. And the answer for that is because the media as an entity has been basically mining Jewish pain, the history of their pain, by taking people out of context and presenting things that are as a fact that is simply untrue. Things that
sometimes you do have some pro-Zionists who take people out of context. I do think sometimes they've done that with Candace. At other times, they have not done that with Candace, and they have accurately represented her and accurately criticized her. So just because some people sometimes misrepresent you doesn't mean all people always do this, or there's nothing to ever criticize you when it comes to comments about Jewish people and stuff like that.
I've never said. We are watching right now, and that's why I'm grateful for you to provide this opportunity. You are watching Rabbi Shmuley do this live, right? When we talk about yellow journalism and people that take things out of context and try to present it to people with a bunch of hysteria and go, oh my gosh, Candace said this. Oh my gosh, Candace is a Holocaust denier. Oh my gosh, he's called me all of these names, and he doesn't have a single fact in there. They just know that if they say those things, it's a trigger. It is reminiscent of exactly what was done for Black Americans for a very long time. They have now since changed their perspective on me, but for a long time, they thought that I legitimately hated being Black and hated the color of my skin because I stood against Black Lives Matter.
I don't think that she hates being Black or hates the color of her skin. I think people are overstating that. I also don't agree with her that somehow she's in better graces with the Black community. I don't see that. I think that's wishful thinking. I think what's happening is that she got away from the Daily Wire and is no longer on that shtick, and she wants to be back in the good graces with the Black community. So all the people that she's been really nasty to, like Lizzo and Cardi B and others, she's now all of a sudden trying to ingratiate herself with them. It's been pretty entertaining to watch. But yeah, I don't think that she originally was saying those things because she somehow hates Black people. She was saying in some cases some things that could be criticized, but she did go too far with it in some cases. And yes, often she was misrepresented by people in the Black community, so they just painted with a broad brush and just said, oh, that she just hates the color of her own skin and stuff like that. That being said, again, I don't think that she's somehow in the good graces with the Black community as a whole in the United States. I think this is wishful thinking on her part.
As an organization, and I stood against what Black Lives Matter was doing, and the media made them hysterical. She's a Black person who doesn't even want to be Black, and she's a Black white supremacist. They bought that narrative because when the media lies, a lot of people accept that what they're reading is true. But of course, I didn't hate Black Americans. I didn't hate anything other than BLM abusing and mining Black pain, going back and saying, well, it's going to be just like slavery, to distract people from what was ultimately just a fraudulent organization that was actually going to bring more harms to Black Americans in the end. And that's how I feel about the state of Israel and everything they're doing. Ultimately, I believe it's going to yield more anti-Semitism. It's going to make people associate what Bibi Netanyahu is doing to all Jews around the world. And so I think it's important for them to realize it's these same exact tactics of manipulation, the same exact name calling and ad hominem attack.
Well, unfortunately, Candace participates in these same tactics. Admittedly so. I showed y'all a clip where she just straight up explicitly admitted that if you criticize her for her Frankist theory, she calls you a pedophile. She straight up admits that on camera explicitly. She says, I say in my mind, okay, pedo, and then she calls them a pedophile. And guess what? Her wonderful fans, her wonderful cult followers have done that to me as well. Just because I criticized her Frankist theory, I get called one as well. So her fans, a lot of them are just like her as well. Not all of them, but some of them. Some of them are just like her. And again, I'm 100% telling the truth. I have shown it, but then you have people in denial like this guy in the chat. You are lying, even though I've shown it on video right here on this channel, even though it was on her show just a few weeks ago. I'm just lying. Yeah, no, you're in denial is what is happening. All right. So she engages in some of these dirty tactics too. You deviate from her, her channel is all over you. Her cult followers are all over you. And she herself will say nasty things about people who don't agree with her. And she will do the same dirty tactics that other people do to her. And I think both are wrong when they do that. She's wrong when she does it, and other people are wrong when they do it to her. Both are wrong.
That is not based in fact and not based in reality, but based in not wanting to answer the fair critiques that people have about what Israel is doing. But that's a very good question.
Okay, Rabbi Shmuley, I mean...
Well, hey, look, people can offer fair critiques. I don't think there's an issue there. I don't think you should be labeled an anti-Semite if you criticize Israel. There are things to criticize Israel for. I've criticized Israel and the IDF right here on this channel before in multiple shows. So I don't have a problem with it in and of itself. It needs to be factual, though, and it needs to be consistent.
There's some validity to that argument, I think, is that too often I do see people immediately branded anti-Semitic if they dare to criticize the Israeli government. But there's a very big difference between criticizing a government and its actions.
This is what I mean by nasty people. Look at this. Is this the best you could do to get subscribers? Who said I was doing this for subscribers? If I was doing this for subscribers, I wouldn't be commenting on this topic at all, because this comment is divisive, or this topic is divisive, no matter which side you're on. So if I was just here for subscribers, I wouldn't be talking about this at all. We would be talking about something else, right? So my question is, why do you have to lie and slander? Is it because I'm saying things that you don't agree with? Is that rational? Interesting the way people work when you don't agree with their side. And notice it's often coming from the anti-Israel side. Again, you do have some of this from the pro-Israeli side, but it often comes from the anti-Israel side.
And a whole people, which is what anti-Semitism is. And do you accept that difference?
The beauty of Israel is it's a democracy. You just said the hundreds of thousands of people are marching against Benjamin Netanyahu. I welcome those protests. It shows that even during war, listen, in 1864, the United States had a presidential election. Some people wanted to cancel it, saying that how could you elect Lincoln when there's a civil war? And they still had the election. Israel's the same. Let's just go through Candace Owens' history of anti-Semitism.
I will let you do that. I will let you do that, and she can respond. But on my specific point, though, do you accept that it's perfectly possible, and indeed it should be in a robust democratic society, a central tenet of this, that Israel's government and its prime minister should be criticized by anyone who chooses to criticize them, without the people who criticize them being branded anti-Semitic?
Of course.
There you go. He explicitly does take the position that just because you criticize Israel doesn't make you an anti-Semite. Okay, so you can't use that against Rabbi Shmuley. But likewise, some of the claims he makes about Candace are also incorrect. You're about to see some.
Of course, I am a very close friend of Netanyahu, and I criticize him allowing Qatar. Qatar is one of the most duplicitous, evil governments in the world. They house all of the leaders, the billionaire leaders of Hamas. I criticize Benjamin Netanyahu, my dear friend, for allowing money to go into Hamas in the belief that they could be bought off of. I criticize the Israeli government for not recognizing the Armenian genocide, something that Candace Owens blames the Jews. She actually says that Kemal Ataturk was led by the Jews to the Armenian genocide. By the way, the Armenian genocide took place under the Ottoman Turks, not Kemal Ataturk. She has no sense of history, and she just fabricates constantly.
Okay,
but let's just look for one moment.
Okay, on the specific
wait one second. But let's just go through her history of anti-Semitism, please.
Yes, you said you had specifics of Candace Owens being
Yes, I will. Yes,
being anti-Semitic. What are those examples?
Okay. You see, the Jewish community did not want Candace Owens to be anti-Semitic. This is actually a tragedy that a woman gifted by God with such eloquence has decided to become a purveyor of hate. And when she said in 2018 that she has no issue with Hitler because if he was a nationalist, but then he wanted to go beyond her borders. Even then, we didn't call her an anti-Semite. That's an absurd thing to say, that you had no issue with Hitler. Hitler, even domestically by then, had a...
She didn't say that. This is where he's doing a disservice to those who do criticize Candace Owens to his own side. She didn't say that. I get what she was saying. We're about to watch the video. I get what she was saying. It doesn't mean she doesn't have any criticisms and no problems with Hitler. You're going too far with that. That being said, there are some things to criticize here, but we can't get to them because you completely diverted our attention with a false claim. And all she has to do is say, I didn't say that, and play the clip. And she clearly didn't say that. And so she must be on the side of truth, right? Wrong. Just because she has been slandered, just because they overstated the criticism, doesn't mean there aren't some criticisms here, and doesn't mean she's on the side of truth. But she plays this victim card really well with her audience. It says, see how they just lie about me? We're fighting a holy war here. And she presents herself as if she's on the side of truth and that there's no merit to some of the claims that are being made about her. And in fact, there are.
Acted all the Nuremberg laws. There was already the November 9th, 1938.
Hang on. Okay, just to clarify, let's take these one at a time. What do you believe she said about Adolf Hitler in the clip you're talking about?
She said that there was no issue with Hitler except for the fact that he went beyond his borders. If he was
let's play the clip. Let me play the clip.
But my point is,
in the interest of fairness, I'm going to play the clip so that viewers who've never heard it can hear what actually got said.
Right. And now she's going to look like she's been vindicated, when in reality, there were some real things to criticize here.
Yeah, I agree. I actually don't have any problems at all with the word nationalism. I think that it gets the definition gets poisoned by elitists that actually want globalism. Globalism is what I don't want. So when you think about, whenever we say nationalism, the first thing people think about, at least in America, is Hitler. You know, he was a national socialist. But if Hitler just wanted to make Germany great and have things run well, okay, fine.
That's what she said. If Hitler wanted to just make Germany great and run well, okay, fine. Right. I understand that. The problem, however, is it wasn't just an issue of him wanting to go beyond his border. By the way, you can want to go beyond your border and still be a nationalist. Those two things are not incompatible. She's missing that. But I get what she's saying. She's trying to say if he just stuck within his border and wanted to be a nationalist and didn't want to take over the globe, okay, fine. I understand what you're saying, but I think you're missing the fact that within Germany, he had some really bad anti-Semitic policies. And this is where Jewish people latch on and they say, but wait, you're saying, hey, as long as it wasn't international, it's okay. But wait, look at all these anti-Semitic policies he had. You're saying you had no problem with it? Well, you're giving Candace too much credit when you do that. I understand where Jewish people are coming from there, because there is a point about, yes, there were some really anti-Semitic national policies that he had, and those are problematic. She's not denying that. The point is, Candace isn't even thinking about that. That's the fault here. That's the problem. You should probably fault for Candace for not knowing a whole lot about the situation with World War II. And you're giving her too much credit, thinking that she knows about all this stuff when she likely doesn't. And that's the problem.
problem is that he had dreams outside of Germany. He wanted to globalize. He wanted everybody to be German, everybody to be speaking German, everybody to look a different way. That's not, to me, that's not nationalism. So in thinking about how it could go bad down the line, I don't really have an issue with nationalism. I really don't. I think that it's okay. It's important to retain your country's identity and to make sure that what's happening here, which I think is incredibly worrisome in terms of the decrease in the birth rate that we're seeing in the UK, is what you kind of want to avoid. So I'm not.
So there it is. I mean, so what you really have with Candace is somebody who's out of her league. She talks on subjects that she has no business talking about and she doesn't know enough about. And when she does that, she's going to be misunderstood often. Now, some people could do better in giving her the judgment of charity. I grant that. They didn't do that here in some cases. I grant that. That being said, she didn't know enough about the subject to really comment on it and shouldn't be. And that is a continual disaster that we see over and over with Candace. She talks about subjects she does not know enough about. And that's an issue. That being said, I don't think that she was saying everything's okay with Hitler here. No, that doesn't logically follow from what she was saying. You're giving her too much credit.
I don't have anything problem. I have no problems with nationalism. It's globalism that I try to avoid.
So, Candace, on that specific point, would you say that Rabbi Shmuley has categorized it correctly or not?
He's just openly lying, and that's why he didn't want you to play the clip. I was in the UK, by the way. I was at the Royal Bill Club. There were Jewish journalists in the room, and nothing was written about it until months later when somebody was working on a hit piece about me. I was answering a question when they were saying, how can we just embrace the word nationalism when it sort of has this dirty feel? And I was just essentially saying that I actually don't have an issue with nationalism. I think it's totally fine to be a British nationalist, be an American nationalist. And the problem is that it's wrongly attributed. That word, I think people instantly associate it with Adolf Hitler.
Right. The issue, however, was, but some of his national policies were anti-Semitic, and she is not addressing that. That was the problem.
And I would argue that he wasn't actually a nationalist because obviously he invaded Poland and he.
You could be a nationalist while invading Poland and wanting to be international. Like those two things are not incompatible. I don't think she understands what a nationalist is.
Went beyond German borders. I didn't even mention Jewish people. I didn't mention the Holocaust. And suddenly you have people like Rabbi Shmuley who are pretending that I got up there and I defended Adolf Hitler. It's just, this isn't
that
good
is not
business.
What she said.
And
we
this is why I say right now, please don't
said.
cut me off. Please do not cut me off. A huge issue that you have right now is this dishonesty. If you really want to understand why Israel is facing a PR crisis, why Zionism right now to people doesn't feel good and they don't want to associate themselves with it, is because it seems like it takes so many lies to maintain.
There you go. So she plays the victim card. You see, I'm just being persecuted because of my criticisms of Israel. And so what Shmuley does when he overstates his case is he gives her a platform and the ability to say, see, I'm just being slandered for criticizing Israel. In reality, no, it's not because you're criticizing Israel that this is happening, Candace. It's because you go beyond just criticisms of Israel and you do say some really slanderous things and you do repeat some blood libels. Whether you're aware of that or not, I don't know. That remains to be seen. But you do some of these things, and that's why people are coming after you. Not because you criticize Israel. There's plenty of people who criticize Israel and people aren't coming after them. Why is that? It's because it's not just an issue of criticizing Israel that we're seeing from Candace.
No reason to misrepresent what I said and to tell people that I support Adolf Hitler, other than the fact that you want people to hate me. And so I'm deeply appreciative of the fact that you guys had that clip ready to go.
Well, you may respond to what you just said and to that clip. Now you've watched it.
Okay. You know, she keeps on saying lying. I never said you shouldn't play the clip. I'm actually happy you did. She said if Hitler had only focused on domestic policy, she would have had no issue with him. His domestic policy was to the Kristallnacht, burned down 3,000 synagogues.
Right. That's where, see, he's giving her too much credit. He's assuming that she has all that in mind when she said this. In reality, she likely doesn't. I'd be shocked if she were even aware of these policies. But if she were somehow vaguely aware of them, they're not on her mind when she's saying this. That's pretty clear. But because he's giving her too much credit, he's assuming she means, hey, as long as it's within the confines of Germany, it was perfectly fine and I don't have an issue with it. Yeah, that's not what she was saying. So I agree that Candace is being slandered in this particular point. That being said, there are some real things to criticize her about with some of her comments about Jewish people and about Israel, but we can't get to them whenever you got Shmuley getting in the way with this stuff.
Single night domestically. That was not in Poland. That was not in Czechoslovakia. His domestic policy was the 1934 Nuremberg laws. His domestic policy was a complete dictatorship where he destroyed the Bundestag and subjected and created Dachau under Himmler. So those are the historical facts. Now but what I said was, even then, the Jewish community gave her a pass. She explained it. One mistake, people make mistakes. Here's her history of anti-Semitism. She's not going to be barred from going into Australia because of anything she said about Israel. That is a fabrication. She's going to be barred. Australia is my wife's country, born in Sydney. She's going to be barred to go to Australia because she's a Holocaust denier. Because
Shmuley, you're killing me here. You're killing me here. Stop it, Shmuley. Stop it. Somebody put a little dog collar on him and we're going to zap him every time he does it. Stop it, Shmuley. Stop it. If you're going to accuse somebody of being a Holocaust denier, like it needs to be like very clear and explicit. That's not the case with Candace. She's going to affirm the contrary. She's going to affirm the atrocities of the Holocaust. And so you can't call her a Holocaust denier. You can criticize some of her understanding of the Holocaust, some of her understanding of the experiments of the Nazis. You can criticize her on those points, but you can't jump the gun and say she's a Holocaust denier. He's weakening the case for people who legitimately criticize Candace. And he makes her look like she's this saint being vilified by this evil entity out there. And she's this righteous one out there waging a holy war against this evil entity. And if you think I'm making that up, I'm not. That's how she plays it up in every single video of hers. She thinks that she is somehow being maligned because she's on this holy side. In reality, maybe she's not as evil as some of the people criticizing her. I don't know. In some cases, that's debatable. But maybe she's not. But she's not on the side of the angels. She's not on the side of truth in many cases. So, but she has an ability to couch herself as if she's on the side of evil whenever people overstate claims about her, saying she's a Holocaust denier. She could just say, no, I'm not. See, I'm not. I affirm the Holocaust. Well, there you go. I guess I'm just being maligned because I criticize Israel. And I'm on the side of truth and I'm fighting this holy war. And I truly believe that we're fighting a spiritual battle here against a dark entity. This is what she does on her podcast every single day.
A 100-year-old victim of Yosef Mengele, the angel of death's experiments, came forward and said, you are going to traumatize me all over again. She actually said that Mengele's experiments, the fourth worst person in Nazi Germany after Hitler, Goebbels, Mengele, it was a fabrication. She's an out-and-out Holocaust denier. And Australia, God bless them, took in so many survivors after the war, including my wife's family from Slovakia.
Well, let me ask Candace Owens now.
Let me ask her now. She said that the Mengele experiments were false. Go ahead.
Let me ask Candace Owens now two things. One, are you a Holocaust denier, or do you accept that 6 million Jews were killed by the Nazis in the Holocaust? And secondly, do you believe that Joseph Mengele did what he is reported to have done and has been since World War II ended?
Thank you for those questions. No, absolutely, I am not a Holocaust denier. This is, again, another fabrication based off of a monologue that I did in which I was putting pressure on the American government to explain why it is a fact that we learned all of these things about the horrific things that Nazi scientists did. And to be clear, Piers, I did not even mention Joseph Mengele's name.
So what she does is she just gets to say, no, I'm not a Holocaust denier. Now he looks bad because he didn't produce receipts and he overstated his claim. And then number two, she's now understating what she did say about these Nazi experiments. And she's just couching it as, I'm asking questions. Why did we bring these Nazis over here with Operation Paperclip? And she's now understating some of the things that she did say. They're not as egregious as Shmuley is going to say they are, but there is some legitimate criticism here. And so she constantly understates and then couches, sometimes inaccurately, comments that she did make. And then he overstates them. He gets dismissed, though, because he hasn't produced the receipts. And if he's the one making the assertions and he's not producing receipts, you lost the debate. Because she's not making most of these assertions. She's just on the defense. So the guy who's making the assertions, that's the one who has the burden of proof. And if you don't provide the evidence and they're producing videos showing you that you're wrong, yeah, you lost at that point. That doesn't mean because you're not on the side of truth or she's on the side of truth. It's because you didn't come prepared And it's not because she had a laptop. It's because you didn't have actual quotes handy. And by the way, in another picture of his on Twitter, he has a little piece of paper there next to his side in that studio booth room that he's in. He has a few notes there. He could have wrote down direct quotes of what she said.
In this skit at all. I spoke about all the things that we learned, that we were told over the years, some of which ended up being rebutted, and there were tons of that part doesn't matter. The point is, the end conclusion of that is that the CIA, via an operation known as Operation Paperclip, took the Nazi scientists and brought them to America, where they continued horrific experiments on Americans. That's the full context of that. So they pulled out a statement, like one sentence, where I said, we've heard all of these sorts of things that they've done, cut people in half, sewed them back together. And I said, that sounds like a ridiculous waste of time. And when you pull that clip up by itself, it sounds like I'm just diminishing all of these stories, when in reality, I'm saying, let's take everything at face value. Let's say everything we've ever heard was true. Why on earth would the American government acquiesce to bringing these scientists over to America? And as a fact, Dr. Mengele was not one of the scientists which was brought over to America. So
but just to be clear, you accept, hang on, I'll come to you, Rabbi Shmuley. To be clear, you accept the Nazis murdered 6 million Jews in the Holocaust?
Yeah, I have never once in any of my appearances
I'm just asking you to clarify.
Denied the Holocaust atrocities.
Okay.
Ever.
And you accept that Joseph Mengele was a despicable man who perpetrated horrendous crimes, including experimenting on Jewish people when they were still alive?
All of the scientists, the Nazi experiments that were done were horrific. And that's why I was saying they were so horrific that it makes you go, why on earth would the American government in this clandestine operation bring over the Nazi scientists who then became a part of our CIA and continued experiments onto America through to the 60s and the 70s. And
right,
I was
let me ask Rabbi
what those
Shmuley to
experiments
respond.
were that was done throughout the Korean War.
Rabbi Shmuley, your response.
And I read it.
After this debate, we will post every single clip. That was a complete and utter fabrication. What she said was that she doubts that any of this happened because it was, as she just said, a waste of time. The whole Holocaust was a waste of time. Hitler had no winter equipment for his soldiers in Stalingrad under General Paulus in 1942 because the boxcars were taking Jews to Auschwitz. You see, that is what hatred is, Candace. It's where you hate so much that it becomes self-destructive. It's what's happening to you. You're a very gifted, eloquent broadcaster. You are self-destructing before America's up.
Well, in fairness, I think both of them are self-destructing. I do believe Candace Owens is self-destructing. I do think she's going down a very dark path. And I think it's partly because I don't think she has very good research abilities. But I also think that Rabbi Shmuley and his crusade against Candace Owens on this particular point and taking down what he believes to be the greatest anti-Semite in the United States, I believe that is also bringing him down. So I kind of feel like both of them are going downhill.
Because you have some issue with the Jews, not with Israel. So let me continue. You actually said that Theodore Herzl was a Frankist. By the way, when you attack Frankists as a bunch of Jewish pedophiles, you forget to mention they all became part of your religion. They all converted in 1757 to Catholicism. You always omit that. But you said that.
See, this is what I mean. He overstates it. Stop it. Stop. Goodness. No, she has made that qualification with her stupid Frankish theory. She has said it has infiltrated Judaism, Islam, and Catholicism. I've heard her say that before. So all she has to do, and she will do here in a moment, is come back and say, actually, I have talked about that. And now he looks stupid because he overstated the claim. And what he should have done is gone after the Frankist theory to begin with, just like the theory itself. And not make these outrageous claims of, well, you forget to deny that they converted to Catholicism. She's addressed that before. She has addressed that before. But now she has an out. And the out is, I didn't deny that. I've said that before. And now she looks like she's on the side of righteousness.
Theodore Herzl was a Frankist, and you said he set up the state of Israel as a refuge for pedophiles. This is before Gaza. This is before Rafah, as a refuge for Jewish pedophiles. You always refer to Jews as pedophiles. It's the main word you use about Jews.
Overstating the claim. Overstating the claim. Rabbi Shmuley, stop it, stop it, stop it. Overstating the claim. She doesn't say that of all Jewish people. You're overstating the claim. There is a legitimate criticism here where she accuses the state of Israel of hiding pedophiles and this and that. And I did a video where I criticized that, and I showed facts to the contrary that disprove her theory. Go after that. Don't overstate the claim and then give her an out to come back and say, I don't say that of all Jewish people. You're harming your own case. What are you doing? You're doing what you said that she's doing, and you're self-destructing.
That what began in Norwich in 1099 with the first blood libel, where the Jews were falsely accused of taking a Christian child and drinking his blood, you actually believe that. You said that Christian bodies, this is before Rafa, this is before Israel, that Christian bodies were found all over Europe.
She did say that. She didn't say the drinking blood part. She liked a tweet where somebody said about the drinking blood, but she said, I only liked the first part of the tweet, not the second part, which was about drinking blood. So he's mixing things up. He's speaking. What happens is there's a grain of truth to what he's saying, and then he overstates it. It happens every single time.
And when you speak about pedophilia, you know, it's funny, you just converted to Catholicism. In 2002, Pope John Paul II, a pope that you would probably like, he was very conservative. He was a great man, great friend of the Jewish community, recognized the state of Israel.
Don't assume that one. I think pretty soon you're going to see her go down the sedevacantist route.
An ambassador in 1994, he apologized, very frail, to the world Catholic community, saying that at least 2% of all Catholic priests were pedophiles. Later, Pope Benedict XVI apologized again. I met Pope Benedict, a great man, great friend of the Jewish community. He said it was 4%. Then Pope Francis raised it probably even higher, 6%. We know 1 million people, almost 1 million people, children in France alone, according to the French government, were abused by Catholic priests. But you've never once condemned Catholic pedophilia.
Okay,
Everyone knows it was the biggest scandal in the world. But only the Jews are pedophiles. Is that anti-Semitism?
Okay, let me ask Candace, do you condemn pedophiles in the Catholic Church, Christian pedophiles?
Yeah, he's just lying again. Actually, on my show, I spoke extensively about Frankism, and I told people that there was a conversion into the Catholic faith. And one of the things that I believe is that all of the Abrahamic religions have been infiltrated by Satanists, and that is what I've said. So they've decided to pull apart only the piece where I'm talking about Judaism. And
the infiltration theory, as I understand it, sadly, it sounds like Matt Walsh was plugging Taylor Marshall's infiltration book yesterday. It's sad, but I honestly, I called it a long time ago. I saw a discussion between all those Daily Wire guys, the Daily Wire Catholics, and they're repeating rad trad and sedevacantist material, probably not knowing it. And I realized very quickly, yeah, they don't have a whole lot of discernment here or information. So I'm not too surprised by that. But she's kind of putting a new spin on this infiltration theory and broadening it and saying it's not just the Catholic Church that's been infiltrated, it's also the Jews, and it's also the Muslims, and it's by the Frankists. And it's just a ridiculous theory, but that's the one that she's promoting right now. And he could have gone after that instead of overstating the case. And she is right. She did speak about this in the context of Catholicism. So what he said is 100% false. So again, here was an opportunity to confront her about things that could be criticized, but we can't get to it because you overstated your case.
Not where I'm speaking about all of the faiths having been infiltrated, and speaking about how it's important for everyone to recognize this so that you can realize that there is this sort of satanic cult that's operating within all of the faiths. And I think that they use Christians and they use Jews and Muslims as well. I've said that on my show multiple times. So he's just absolutely lying about that. I think the difference here is that you'd be hard pressed to find a Catholic that would in any capacity defend pedophilia. Now, regarding what he is saying that I said Judaism is filled with pedophiles, that is objectively nonsense. I am a Christian. I'm aware of what the first 5 books of my Bible are. That would be me insinuating that, okay, well, the first 5 books of my Bible are inspired by pedophilia.
Doesn't logically follow, because Judaism could be distinct from the first five books of the Bible. So no, that doesn't logically follow. That doesn't clear her from that accusation. However, I don't think that accusation against her was entirely accurate. Because she's not speaking about all Jewish people. She's speaking about Frankists who have allegedly infiltrated the Jewish people. And so obviously not all Jewish people are going to be Frankists. Ergo, she's not talking about all Jewish people.
That's absolutely false. What I said, and I'm hopeful that this is something that the rabbi will agree with, is that it is a fact that Jewish pedophiles, American Jewish pedophiles, escape and run and hide in Israel, where they are given safe harbor by the government. That is a fact. They will not extradite our pedophiles. That is an absolute nonsense, given the many billions of dollars that we give to Israel, that we can't get back the men that are raping children. That's
inaccurate, factually inaccurate. We have got back some of them. And there is a problem with some of them fleeing based on the possibility of aliyah, making aliyah. But it's not so that they can harbor pedophiles. It's because there is this policy of the right to return. And so there's a number of things that they're balancing out here. But no, some have been brought back, so that destroys their theory. But yeah, look, he could have spoke about that if he wasn't making and overstating his claims. But because he was doing that, she ends up coming out on top and looking like she's on the side of truth.
Okay. And I can't imagine a single person that would think otherwise, that is not a nonsense and that we should not be giving back those pedophiles. And to be clear, it wasn't Candace Owens who researched and came up with this. It was an incredible Jewish organization that looked into this, talked about how wrong it was, and brought it into the mainstream media. If you don't like that Israel is harboring pedophiles, that's not on me. That is on the state of Israel. Okay. Again, I am condemning.
And it's got to be true because Candace said it came from a Jewish guy, right? Came from some Jewish researchers. So it has to be true, right?
The state of Israel for harboring American pedophiles and not extraditing them. Do you have a disagreement there, Rabbi? If so, please share.
Thank you, Candace. Not only is that an absolute lie and fabrication against Israel, the most...
I love how some people can't follow a conversation. This person in the chat says, right to return as a child rapist to avoid prison and persecution? No. We're talking about people who have not yet been convicted. They've been accused, and the right to return not as a child rapist or even as one who is accused, but as a Jewish person to return to the Jewish homeland. Please do some research.
Famous example, the country that will now bar you from entering because you're a Holocaust denier, not because of Israel, because a 100-year-old experimentee of Mengele came forward and said, do not subject me to this trauma. And the Interior Minister of Australia said, wait, what's it?
Well, she just said it.
No, but she denies Mengele's experiments.
And that's not, when they literally just said 6 million Jews got killed in the Holocaust.
Wait.
That's not Holocaust
denial.
denial.
Come on, Pierce. You're more subtle than that.
It's not about
you
being
can
subtle.
say that
It's
6
about
million Jews died. You can say
she believes
of course you could be a
happened.
Holocaust denier. Why don't you let me answer, please? You could say that 6 million Jews were accidentally bombed by Curtis LeMay and by Bomber Harris, and there was no Zyklon B. She said that Mengele did not do those experiments. By the way, this is not my decision. This is the government of Australia that is barring her. Please don't interrupt me, Candace. The most famous example in Australia of a Jewish pedophile. Please don't interrupt me. The most famous example of a Jewish pedophile was a woman named Malka Laufer. She was a religious woman from Melbourne, Australia, and she apparently abused 74 children. She ran to Israel. She was prosecuted by Israel, extradited, she's in Australia being prosecuted right now. This is a total fabrication. And it comes down to what Candace has the most unhealthy obsession with Jewish sexuality. Notice that we all know that the Vatican, of course.
See what I mean? He's overstating it. Stop. It just... You're not helping your case, all right? You're not helping the Jewish people. You're not helping Zionists, Rabbi Shmuley. You're not doing any of that. I think you need to bow out from this conversation and let other people take over.
Of course, took cardinals, like the Cardinal Archbishop of Boston, and gave them the highest positions in the Vatican.
Wait. So he's talking about Bernard Law here, in the case of Bernard Law. There's a grain of truth to what he's saying. But he is making some assumptions. But now he's criticizing the very guy he praised earlier, which was John Paul II. So that's interesting. So do you praise Catholics when it's convenient and then criticize them when it's convenient, or are you consistent? I kind of wonder if he praises Catholics whenever it's convenient and then criticizes them when it's convenient.
He has never criticized that. Only Israel. Now, Candace, let me ask you a point-blank question. Did you say that Theodor Herzl, you said he was a Frankist or descended from Frankists. Again, Frankists all became Catholic. He was Jewish. Did you say that Theodor Herzl set up Israel as a haven for Jewish pedophiles?
Okay, first and foremost, I just want to debunk your claim that what I said was a lie. It is in CBS News, and it was the Jewish Community Watch, an American organization that tracks accused pedophiles who has been trying for years to find a specific pedophile. They are the ones that brought this to the forefront, and CBS News partnered with them.
What's the name of the pedophile? What's the name of that pedophile? I just gave you a name, Malka Laufer. What's the name of that pedophile?
Well, they were tracking down.
You don't know, do you? Now let's go to the Vatican. How many people they allowed? How many cardinal archbishops were protected?
Please don't cut me off. Please don't cut me off.
Okay.
You told a lie, and so I'm debunking it live for you. The pedophile.
What's the name of the pedophile they're looking for? What's the name?
I'm trying to say it for the third time. His name is Jimmy Julius Carreau.
You're looking it up right now? You mean you said all this and you had no idea?
The title of the article in CBS News is entitled, How Jewish American Pedophiles Hide from Justice in Israel. CBS News teamed up with a Jewish organization and came to this conclusion because they were the ones that brought it to the forefront. So courageous Jewish people who are
Do we
calling
really
this out
need
as
someone
something
to
that is
read
wrong.
off the internet in a
Jewish Community
debate?
Watch
This is not
the
your
name
show.
of
This
the
is a debate.
organization.
Okay.
I am
Did you
debunking
say
your
that Theodore
lying
Herzl
lies.
created the state of
I think
Pierce? Did she
if you
say
don't mind
that
me
Theodore
saying,
Herzl
I
set
think
up
we
Israel?
are getting too obsessionally sidetracked into paedophilia. On
No,
this
no, no, no.
debate.
This is one
I want to end. We've got to end the debate. I want to end the debate by giving you both this opportunity. Right? You are both religious people. Right? Every religion purports to be peace-loving. Right? Religions are supposed to spread peace and harmony and love and respect and kindness. Whether you're a Catholic, as I am, as Candace is, whether you're a Jew, as you are, Rabbi Shmuley. So I'm going to ask you both, and I'll start with you, Candace, to say something nice about Rabbi Shmuley. Be a Christian. What would you say?
Yeah, I actually deeply appreciate Rabbi Shmuley having a platform. It's not something that I've ever said I want his platform stripped away because
that wasn't saying something nice about him. Neither one could say something nice about each other. Well, actually, Shmuley does kind of, but that's saying something nice about his ability to speak as far as having a platform. That's not something nice about him. But notice how she completely wasn't able to do that, but she basically says, well, he has I appreciate that he has a right to speech so that he can expose himself.
I think that he does more in terms of revealing what it is that I'm speaking about when I'm talking about radicalism than anybody else. And so in that way, I'm grateful that he has a platform, and I would never call for him to be banned from anywhere. I hope he gets a megaphone, and I think that people watching his behavior today.
Do you see any saving grace as a human being?
I think I will pray for him. I will pray for his conversion into.
That wasn't the question. Was there any saving grace as a human being? She couldn't offer any.
Christianity. I don't think it's normal to lie like that and feel nothing, but he continues to do it. He's filing FBI reports against me over pizza. I don't have any hatred in my heart towards Rabbi Shmuley. I really don't. Like I've said, I
look at this. More Candace cult followers. Just saying this guy is not being fair. You haven't watched shows. You're just putting out of context. I watched almost all of Candace Owens shows in the last, 6 months. And I'm more familiar with the situation than you likely are. So why are you lying? Why are you lying? What is it about Candace cult followers that makes them act this way? That's the question that I have. By the way, as far as the Pizzagate issue, again, he did not contact the FBI because she was sent a pizza. He contacted the FBI because right after she had made some very serious statements about Shmuley, a pizza was ordered to his house. It was very clear they had not ordered the pizza, and his contact information was on there, his daughter's address, stuff like that. And so it was a clear message. Hey, we know where you live. We know where you are. Was that something that Candace Owens is directly responsible for? There's no evidence of that, to my knowledge. So if she is, there's no evidence to say that. Was this one of her followers? Maybe. I don't know if there's direct evidence of that either. Could be something else from some other situation. Don't know. But that's why the FBI was contacted. I understand why the FBI was contacted. We don't know for sure if Candace or one of her fans had anything to do with it. But I do know some of her fans are crazy because I've had to deal with them personally. And I could say the kind of people she is producing, that bothers me. The kind of people that she is targeting and that she's reaching, I have to say the fruit she is producing is absolutely rotten. And I think that does say something about the content that she's producing.
Hope he forever has a platform, because I think that it showcases to the world what it is that I'm speaking about when we speak about radical Zionism.
Okay, Rabbi Shmuley, do you want something nice about Candace Owens?
Absolutely. She is gifted by God with incredible eloquence.
All right, so he actually did say something nice about her. She didn't do that, though. I do think that's telling.
I think she can repent and sees being a force for hatred against the black community, who call her Candace, who have rejected her utterly. She is one of the most despised women in America by the black community. She is doing a whole new tour to be reaccepted. I think she can use her eloquence to apologize. Instead, she essentially hinted that the only reason she attacked the black community for the past 4 years, calling them stupid and dumb and can't vote for themselves and cry wolf and racism, was because she was forced to do so at the Daily Wire. I call it the Daily Liar. Maybe that's correct, but I think she should take personal responsibility. Saying that Israel was created as a haven for Jewish pedophiles by Theodor Herzl is not the way she's going to repent. Saying that she defends Kanye West when he says he loves Hitler. Hitler killed 10,000 Jews a day, 3 9/11s a day for 4 years.
Okay.
Her defense of Kanye and of Andrew Tate is absolutely disgusting. And there is some legitimate criticism of hypocrisy on her part. And I've seen some people do videos pointing out the hypocrisy. And that is some fair criticisms about Candace. But again, coming from Shmuley, where the claims are often overstated, all that's going to be lost in the mix.
1941 and
I think
1945.
we know
Wait, one second, please.
No, I know the greatest hits are coming. It's fine. We've heard them.
But
All
you know,
I wanted
you
you to
wanted
do
to
was say
speak.
something
You
nice.
said, I think she could use her. I think she could use.
That's how we started this.
I think she could use her eloquence to repent. That's all.
Okay.
And I think finally that if Candace could just come forward and admit that as a Christian, Jesus said clearly that you cannot approach him except through the Jews. He said that the Jews are the root and Christians are the branch. The fact that we in the community consider her the #1 anti-Semite in America means that she cannot relate to Jesus. So I'm saying become a Christian. That's a nice, very nice thing to say. The fact that Jesus said, I'm sent only to the lost sheep of Israel. Come and learn about the Jewish Jesus. You know what, Candace? I'll give you a free copy of my book, Kosher Jesus. It teaches you about the Jewish Jesus, the meek shall inherit the earth, love your enemies, turn the other cheek. Don't say, and stop calling me.
I do think Candace has something to learn here about the role of Israel in Catholicism and in the New Testament, especially the book of Romans. I think this is where she has a lot to grow. But frankly, I'm more concerned about other aspects of her Catholic formation or lack of formation than just her understanding of the role of Israel and the state of Israel and stuff like that.
Killer. Stop saying I'm trying to kill you. You've said it over and over again. You are saying what Henry II said, rid me of this troublesome priest.
I think we've established you're struggling to find anything nice to say about Candace. But I appreciate you both coming on together for this debate. I think it's been very illuminating. And thank you for doing it. Thank you for being uncensored.
He said, you're struggling to find something nice. Well, at least he said something nice about Candace, whereas Candace couldn't even do that. That being said, I think overall, the reason why Candace won is by default, which basically anyone with an IQ of 60 could have won that debate, because all they had to do is just say, no, I don't deny the Holocaust. No, I'm not an anti-Semite, and you won. I'm pretty sure a person with the 60 points of IQ could do that. So obviously she's much higher than that. I'm just saying, like, anybody, it doesn't matter. Like, anybody could have won this debate because the problem is the burden of proof was on Rabbi Shmuley because of the direction he took. Since he didn't stick to the question of Israel, he wanted to make it about Candace. Well, because he didn't come with receipts and often made inaccurate claims that were overstated about her, she just had to deny it. And they play a few videos and show that that's not what she said. And bam, she wins by default. That's it. Anybody could have really won at this point. So that's unfortunate because that doesn't mean that she's on the side of truth. It also doesn't mean that Shmuley is on the side of truth. I think both of them are a clown show and both of them have serious problems. There could be one who's more on the side of truth than the other on some points, and then in other points, maybe not so. But we can't really even get to all that because he didn't produce receipts and he overstated his claim. So it wasn't as productive as I was hoping it would be. And what this does is it makes her look like she's on the side of truth. She's on the side of holiness. So she goes right back on her channel, last night, and goes and celebrates her victory and tries to make it look like she's being persecuted because she's this holy and righteous person fighting against this evil entity out there. And she plays it up. And she's given an opportunity to do that because people overstate their criticisms. And I think they do a disservice then to those people who have legitimate criticisms about Candace. And this is what creates Candace cult followers, because they see this stuff, they see slander being made about her. Then the slander turns out to not be true, and they think, oh, well, she must be slandered because she's on the side of righteousness. Not realizing that she engages in some of that slander too. Not realizing she makes horrible claims and factually incorrect claims and slanderous claims about others. Not realizing that she has a very problematic agenda in many cases. But they don't see that because it's a lot easier to demonstrate that she's being slandered in some particular cases. So that's how the Candace cult continues to grow, and I suspect it will continue to grow significantly as the time continues, which is unfortunate. Anyways, I hope y'all enjoyed this. If you did, hit that like button and the subscribe button. Help me reach new people who haven't heard of this channel before with this video. So if you thought this was helpful, it was productive, do your part. Hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, put a comment there in the comment section. And also don't forget, check me out at patreon.com/Reason to Theology. If you want to become a channel member, you'll get access to extra exclusive content, and you'll be supporting what I do here so I can continue to do what I do. All right. See y'all soon. God bless.